Jim Miller of CNN, you were one of the first news people on the scene here. What did you find when you first arrived?
Found things very chaotic when we first arrived, and a lot of work to be done. In those early days, the jib was working in a small hallway, basically, and we were feeding from on the base, near the base where we are now. And we went over there 3 or 4 times a day and just stayed out in the sun in the parking lot and worked. About a week after that, we moved things over here to where we are at the hotel, and things became a little more organized. When we first landed, of course, you want to do as much as possible and try to find and report as much as possible what's happening. And the story was just so big that you couldn't be everywhere. And until we got our feet on the ground, both the military, PAOs, and ourselves, it was kind of hectic and chaotic in those first few days.
Deborah Amos of National Public Radio, you used exactly the same words as we first sat down. This story is so big. You're here by yourself, essentially. Mm-hmm. How are you covering it?
Well, the reason it's so big is because it's about everything. It's about Arab politics, it's about international relations, it's about Saudi society, it's about the American military. So you have to pick your shots. And I find that I sort of say, all right, the theme this week will be the American military, and the theme next week will be Saudi society. It's because if you don't sort of set out some marching orders for yourself, you know, as you were saying, you just can go crazy. There's too much to do here. So I find that I do it by themes and try to go after it that way.
How much are you able to get on the air?
Well, you know, as much as there's a story here, the question is, how long does it take to put together a story? You know, sometimes it takes a day and sometimes it takes a week. It depends on what I'm after. I find that, you know, to go off and talk to Saudis takes a little bit longer, to find people that are willing to talk to you, to make sure that you get the spread of people. It's very easy here to sort of be fooled into talking to people who speak English, who are like you, who've been to the States, who've been educated, and you really have to try to balance that and go out of your way to find the bulk of Saudi society, to show that balance between the people who do want things to change in this country and the majority of people who don't, who are really very happy with the way things are, who are quite conservative, who never see American troops, who are going about their business as if nothing really much has happened here.
But as a woman and as a reporter, two things that stereotypically you would say that the Saudis perhaps aren't as comfortable with. How's your reception been? Not,
as a matter of fact, I would say that it's easier for a woman here than it is for a man. I can do things that some of my male colleagues can't do as comfortably. You see, I can go back and forth. If I dress properly, I can go off and see and go outside, see all the women that I want to, and then go off and in American standard be able to see, you know, all the military. So I can shift back and forth, and I find that with a lot of Saudis here, especially male officials, we're a bit of a novelty. So they like to see us, and they're more comfortable talking to us. We're not a challenge in any way. We sort of don't represent anything quite Western. We're just women, and it's interesting to talk to us in ways that they are usually comfortable talking to men.
You're nodding your head, Jim.
Yeah, I agree. We have a woman reporter here, Christiana Mapur, and I have photographer Jane Evans and a sound technician Maria Fleet. We have been able to do several women's stories, and these women have also been able, as Deborah says, it's more of a novelty, and I think they've had the access sometimes better than the men have, because men are men, and they're used to dealing with men, the Saudis are. And they find it a novelty that they can sit down and talk with women. And, we have made some headways and some, you know, quite frankly, some scoops by the fact that we've had this edge, if you will. It's unique. They don't expect to see it. And while most, as Deborah says, most of these people were educated in the West, some of them were raised in the West. They've come back here, and they are kind of torn between two cultures, so to speak, and it makes it a little easier to work with. And Deborah's right in that aspect, that she does have something of a little edge over an all-male crew. I know some of the networks came in here and they didn't have women on in the first, and then they started rotating women in certain aspects and certain jobs. And I got to believe it's not only because there are women involved in the business, but also maybe it's to help them out a little bit.
As the producer coordinating this coverage for CNN, what do you see as your mission?
My mission is not to get beat, not to have something happen that I don't know about. I think we're here to tell the world, because CNN is a worldwide audience. We're here to tell the world what's happening over here and try to explain it the best we can. Also, this has been a closed society for many years, and the press has not been allowed in. When we're not telling what the news of the day is and not telling what the analyzation of, we're trying to show a little bit of Saudi Arabia too, and what this culture is like, and what life's like here, and how these people think, and how the whole country operates.
There have been many news reports and quotes that Saddam Hussein is watching your network. Do you think about that when you're putting stories together?
Not really. I know he watches. I know his people watch. I know they have taken our pieces and used them on the air. But the Saudis would like for us to do that, to consider what we put in our piece. But we haven't. It doesn't. It's not at the top of my mind. And if I have a story that needs to be told, we tell it.
Deborah, I'm just curious, I'd like to hear your perspective. Is it possible, considering the constraints of reporting on this story, for a reporter to get beat? It seems like everyone sort of has access to the same things.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because I keep saying to my colleagues, and I think it explains why there's not, you know, a reporter frenzy here. There's no scoops in this story. You maybe can get someplace first, and I think Jim's right. You'd like to think that by the end of the day you knew everything that happened, but you'll pretty much know it by the end of the day. There's been a couple of times where reporters have seen something first, or had something first, or thought something first, but it's not that kind of story. It's too diffuse. I don't quite know how to explain it. I've never worked on a story like this, and I suppose it's because it's a rolling event that there's no scoops to it. And as Dick Cheney says, what you see in public is pretty much what's going on in private. I think even for officials, there's no scoops either. This thing has been carried out in the media as a rolling event, and that's what you do every day. You sort of scramble after this rolling event and put a sort of stab at it and see if you can stop it from running away from you. But scoops, not so much.
You agree, Jim?
Yeah, as Deborah says, it is so spread out that I don't know what scoops, you know, are scoops. We got the first pictures of the border back in the early days, and we had tanks and that type thing, but I don't know that was a scoop. We just happened to be there before and get the access before anyone else did. There were other people who tried to get up there, and they either got stopped or whatever. We were lucky enough and fortunate enough to get through and get the pictures. If that's a scoop, then we have had our share and everybody else has had their share. I don't think anybody's going to find out that Saddam Hussein is sitting on the other side of the border and have pictures of it before anybody else in this regard here.
What haven't you seen that you'd like to?
We haven't seen the stealth bomber, and for people who are here, stealth fighter, for people who are here, that's kind of like the ultimate goal. I think it's the forbidden fruit, and since we can't have it, we want it. And we've actually been to the base where 8 of them are, but we couldn't see them. And I think that's what we'd like to see, just to say, hey, here it is. We know it's here. The military has said it's here, but we haven't been able to get a look at it. I don't know too many things that I haven't seen that I'd like to see. I'd like to have a little more time. You know, I told one of the Saudis once that a sad part about coming here is that you only get to meet half the population in terms of communicating, and that's the male population, because there's no really interaction with the female portion. And I think I'd like to talk to some Saudi women en masse, men talking to Saudi women, and find out what they think about this whole situation. I think that could give you a nice perspective on life and the whole crisis here in the Gulf.
Deborah, what would you like to see or hear that you haven't?
There hadn't been much that I haven't been able to do that I wanted to do. The thing that I would like to do more is Saudi military. We haven't had a lot of access. I'd like to go and see a Saudi flyer and see how he lives and what his relationship is with his family, because I'm very curious about. I've not covered the military, certainly not my own, and you see personality types in the services. Marines are different than Air Force, and the Army people are different, and they all sort of squabble and they say things against each other. And I'm very curious if that's an American phenomenon, or this is something that, because of the job you do, it dictates your personality. I'd like to know if Saudi flyers are like American flyers, and if Saudi Marines are like American Marines. That's not been so easy. The Saudis are quite keen on taking us out for press conferences, and we get to watch, the Navy go through drills, and we can see Saudi, flyers flying about. But I want to know who they are and how their personality is affected by what they've chosen to do with their lives, and see, if they're like Americans. That's the only thing I can think of.
On that note, back in the States, we keep hearing statements from officials stressing the international aspects of this force buildup. Other than the Saudis, are you seeing much evidence of international forces?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's almost a weekly trip to a place called Hafr al-Batin, where the Arab forces are. That's where the French will go. Today, the Brits are coming in. Tanks are rolling off. Well, I guess tanks will be coming in about a week. And if we want to, we can certainly go and see those different forces. So, yeah, you do get a sense when you go out in the field. Not so much here. Although, this last week, we now have an addition of a British public information officer who's arrived at the Jib. So, there's a little more sense, even in the hotel, that it's an international force.
If you spend most of your time here in this hotel, can you cover this thing?
Oh, I spend most of my personal time here, yes, but I've got crews who go out and they go all over the country. We've been in the south of the country. We've been in doing military stories down there with the Saudis. We have been to Jeddah several times doing the political story aspect. We've been to Taif interviewing the Kuwaiti government that is in exile. We've been to Riyadh several times. We've been to Afar al-Batin countless times. We've been to Khafji in the border. Yes, our crews go all over. If the base is here, yes, I think we've done a very good job in covering this story thus far.
Last question for both of you is what happens if the game changes and hostilities break out? How will your coverage change?
We'll try to do the best we can, as we have been doing. We will be part of a DOD pool be formed, and we will also have a crew that's unilateral, and we'll try to get as much access and as much news as possible through the guidelines and restrictions that may be put on us. But I got a feeling we're not going to be able to just go helter-skelter where we want once that happens.
Deborah, ever have any aspirations in the past to be a war correspondent?
I've been a war correspondent almost my whole career. This will be my fifth one. Although I must say that this one is the most unpredictable one that I think that I will ever cover if it comes to it.
Which others have you covered?
I covered the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, I covered the Iran-Iraq War, I covered the tanker war, and I went to Afghanistan with the Mujahideen twice.
And this is less predictable than any of those?
Absolutely, because the weaponry involved is so much different than any of those other ones. Those were all, now that I think about it, sort of minor conflicts compared to what this could be. It's the fourth largest army in the world against, the first, and other international forces. The technology is staggering. The job is staggering. It's not even clear what the objectives are on this war. And in terms of coverage, Jim's right. We will be in pools. That's also untested. It didn't work this way in World War II, which is it's more like that than anything I've ever seen on the battlefield. So all of us are unsure about what the coverage is going to be like. We just don't know.
Thanks to both of you for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.